Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review. This time I'm going to be reviewing the first season of the show Alcatraz. Now let me get it out of the way first of all saying that I think Alcatraz is a fairly solid show and I did enjoy watching it. That said, I also kind of had some problems with it. But let's get to the main. Let's start off with the good things. First of all, the characters. We have Doc, Rebecca, and Hauser are the main characters. And overall, I think they're pretty good. I really like Doc he's my favorite character, and being a somewhat geeky guy, naturally I'm very drawn to him because he likes comic books and so do I. And he's a generally the most normal, relatable person I think on the show. That said, though, we did have that one episode with the kid who got kidnapped, and Doc says, tells the kid at the very end, hey, when I was a kid, somebody kidnapped me too. And this is never touched on again for the rest of the season. Now, this seems like something that would be a really interesting, compelling aspect of Doc's character that would tell us a lot about why he is the way he is. He was basically accused at one point of having arrested development. Although I'm going to give Doc credit for and assume that he is not, in fact, a never nude. And if you understand what I'm talking about, you get a gold star. Anyway, so I think there is some wasted potential in terms of storytelling with Doc. And in a lot of ways, he's also sort of the deus ex machina in that he knows everything there is to know. Granted, it's very well established that he is like the Alcatraz expert. But, sometimes it just seems to me like they're relying on that a little too much. He's like a walking, talking, magical database. I think it would be more interesting if they really kind of had to work harder to kind of get information on these people. Try to understand what was going on with them, the details of who they were. But that's just one thought that I had. As for Rebecca, I really hate to say it, but I think out of the three main characters, I think she's the least compelling. And it's not that I don't like Rebecca or the actress that's playing her, it's just, her Uncle Ray seems like a much more interesting character to me. Rebecca's main thing is she wants to catch, Tommy Madsen, who's of course her grandfather for killing her partner. But beyond that, there's not really a lot going on with Rebecca. She's just kind of married to the job. Her sole personal life mainly seems to consist of her uncle. And I just felt a hard time connecting with her as a person, as a character. And then we got Hauser. Now Hauser I like quite a bit because he's a very morally ambiguous guy. We keep wanting to just shake the guy and say, Hauser, quit being a dick. Put a little trust in Rebecca and Doc. They're good people. They've done well so far. But Hauser doesn't do that, although he does improve over time. But he's also got the doctor from Alcatraz, there, who's perfectly content to just be a jerk to these people, these patients. He was one of the guys who, he got off on, giving people stitches without giving them anesthetic. In a lot of ways, the prison doctor, whose name escapes me at the moment, is really just as bad as the people who were locked up in Alcatraz. He just found a socially acceptable way to get his jollies. And look at Hauser. This is a guy who was willing to let one of the 63s murder an 11-year-old boy just so that he could catch him when he brings the body back to the kid's house. Canceling an Amber Alert or prioritizing the rescue of this kid. It doesn't even seem to register to Hauser. Again, he improves a little bit as the season goes on, but it makes him a very hard character to feel empathy for at times. Although when they got rolling and sort of got into the thing with him and Lucy, I think that helped a lot. It really helped put a face on Hauser and who he was. Although does feel a little weird that he sort of pined over this woman for 50 years. Now, some people might call this romantic. I personally find that kind of disturbing. And, not to really be a jerk about this, but I have to point out that interracial romance in 1960, even in California, that was going to go over badly with some people, and this is never even for a moment touched on. I'm just saying this seems like they're brushing this little fact aside for the sake of political correctness. Because heaven forbid people should have to deal with the fact that people in the past, they thought differently than we do. They had different morals. Now, this doesn't excuse a lot of things that people did in the past. I'm just saying the past is what it is. In fact, there was a saying that I came across not too long ago that I like quite a bit, and it goes, "The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there." Again, this is just something I think we should think about. So that's all I really have to say about the three main characters. I don't really consider Lucy to be a main character quite yet, seeing as how she spent a good chunk of the season in a coma. But talking about Lucy, I do like her, but I'm just not really excited about Lucy. She's not really somebody I want to see what happens more with the plot as she impacts it, rather than what's going on with Lucy as a person. Now, that said, after she came out of the coma and in the last couple episodes, she did give that really nice little speech about what it was like to come back to the world after 50 years. I thought that was a really very good and very, very needed human moment for her. So it sort of feels to me like as time went by, the writers did start getting a better and better grasp of the characters, started being able to show us more layers to them. And I am pleased by that. Now, I've got a couple of notes here on this little pad, so just give me a second here. Okay. One criticism I do have of this first season is that there seemed to be like a couple of filler episodes. And come on, in a season that's only 13 episodes long, do we really need this sort of thing? Like Clarence Montgomery. Okay, now Clarence Montgomery was a very good story. Clarence is so far the only person at Alcatraz who is actually innocent of the crime that he committed. And looking back at that time, they did very well, I think, address the racial issues that were going on there. I mean, it was really hard not to feel bad for Clarence and the other non-black inmates at Alcatraz, who they were already in a bad situation, and being black only made it worse. And how do you not feel for those guys in that situation? That said, well, it was a good episode and a good story, and they did have a compelling character who I cared about. As near as I can tell, nothing that happened in that episode really advanced the overall plot of the show. And again, this is this thing of 13 episodes for one season. If you have that little amount of time, you really need to make the most of every episode. And if you don't, it kind of gives me the impression that you don't really have enough story for the amount of airtime that you're getting. And that's usually not a good sign. Okay, let me see what else. Oh yeah, one other thing that somebody brought up, I believe it was one of the reviewers on Television Without Pity, it's why the heck didn't the warden have his own key? I mean, considering how precious this is, isn't the warden going to hang on to this with all his might? Again, it's a question for later, I guess, in the series, assuming there is more. But I don't know, that just didn't feel very authentic to me. So let's kind of just talk about the 63s themselves real quick. Exactly how good the story was, again, naturally varied between them. Jack Sylvain's story. I liked him quite a bit. You feel sorry for this guy. He's a guy who's caught up in things that are just so beyond his control. He made one really big mistake in his life, and the dominoes just kept falling. But then he comes back as a 63, and he's got something in his mind that makes him go out and kill people. And I just had this horrible impression that if this hadn't been done to him, he'd have never done those things. That he was fundamentally a decent guy who made a bad choice and paid a far higher price for it than he really should have. Another guy I liked was Ernest Cobb. Not because he was very obviously based on someone from the real world history, which made him seem much more scary, but I don't know. There was just something compelling about Ernest. I mean, even though he was a horrible person who did terrible things, just to sort of get back at the world, I kind of felt sorry for him. And also, that weird little mantra he was babbling and what he said to Lucy about how she would never be safe, it really makes me wonder if there's more to this guy to be told. And I hope there is, because the fellow they have playing him really does a great job. Actually, I'll pick Ernest. I'll say it right now. I think Ernest was my favorite 63 of the season. So that brings us overall to the mystery of Alcatraz. And I think with a show like this being built around a mystery, it does make sense that the end of the season leaves you wanting more. I'd be willing to watch another season of the show. I want to know what's going on here. So how satisfied am I overall with what we did learn this season? So, to be honest. The things that happen in the final episodes certainly are intriguing. Although I can't help but wonder why, if they were planning this for so long, that one guy, the scientist guy, they wouldn't take some kind of precautions to make sure that scientist guy wouldn't come back in a place that was sealed up behind a humongous wall and that he couldn't get out. I mean, as best we can tell, the only precaution he took was that he apparently had some food in there stored up. Well, considering that he could have been in there for hundreds and hundreds of years if they hadn't broken down the wall, this seems somewhat inadequate in terms of planning. And then, of course, there's the question of where's the warden, and is he really the one behind all this? Well, considering that he was just a prison warden, I seriously doubt that. Okay, my time's about up here. So overall, Alcatraz, not the greatest thing on television, but a show with potential. Like I said, I'd be willing to watch another season of it, and I think it's worth giving a shot. Give it a few episodes and see if you like it. That said, I'm going to call it good. I'll see you guys next time. Oh, and please comment, rate, and subscribe, as always. See ya.